Chief Obinna Nwosu had placed his order in German solely to humiliate her. The waitress smiled in silence. What he didn't know was that she spoke 7 languages, and one of them would change his life forever. The Golden Palm restaurant glowed with the splendor of opulence. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like artificial constellations, casting sparkles on white silk tablecloths and polished silver cutlery. It was the kind of place where the powerful came to celebrate their power, where money spoke louder than words, and where people like Adaobi Namdi were invisible. Adaobi walked between the tables with the tray perfectly balanced on her right hand. She had been working there for months, always with the same routine. Arrive early, clean, serve, smile, and return home with aching feet and her pride intact. Because that was the only thing no one could take from her, her pride. That night, the restaurant was especially full. Business moguls, politicians, local celebrities all laughing, toasting, completely ignoring those who served them as if they were ghosts in aprons. Adaobi paused for a moment near the kitchen, breathing deeply. Chef Dele observed her from his station, noticing something in her expression. "Are you all right, Adaobi?" he asked with that deep voice that always sounded like an embrace. "Yes, chef. Just a long night. Every night is long when you work for people who think money makes them better than you." Chef Dele wiped his hands on his apron. "But remember what I always say. Dignity has no price, and you have more dignity in one finger than all of them put together in their wallets." Adaobi smiled slightly. Chef Dele was one of the few who treated her like a person in that place. The others, including some colleagues, saw her as the quiet girl who never complained, who accepted the miserable tips and the dismissive glances without saying a word. What no one knew was why she kept quiet. What no one imagined was what she hid behind those dark eyes that observed everything with an intensity that few noticed. The main door opened with that particular sound that announced the arrival of someone important. Adaobi turned instinctively and saw 2 men enter. The first was older, with grey hair, perfectly combed back, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Adaobi's annual salary. He walked with that natural arrogance of those who have never had to worry about anything in life. The second was younger, perhaps in his late 30s, with that air of an heir who knows the world belongs to him by right of birth. Both laughed about something, while the restaurant manager practically ran towards them. "Chief Obinna Nwosu, what an honor to have you with us tonight. Your favorite table is ready." Chief Obinna Nwosu. Adaobi had heard that name many times. He owned a chain of luxury restaurants across the region, invested in real estate, and, according to rumors, was a man who enjoyed humiliating those he considered inferior, which by his standards was basically everyone. "Misusa de Bayo." The manager approached Adaobi with a tense expression. "I need you to attend table 7. It's the Nwosus." "Table 7? But Mr. Mark usually attends that one." "Mr. Mark is busy, and they've just arrived. Go now." Adaobi felt a knot forming in her stomach, but nodded without protesting. It was her job, and she needed that job more than anyone in that restaurant could imagine. She approached the table where the 2 men were already seated, still laughing at some private joke. When Adaobi arrived, neither of them looked at her. It was as if she were part of the furniture. "Good evening, sirs. Welcome to the Golden Palm. My name is Adaobi, and I'll be your server tonight. May I begin by offering you something to drink?" Chief Obinna finally looked up, but not to meet her eyes. He scanned her from head to toe with that look Adaobi knew too well. The look that evaluated, judged, and dismissed in seconds. "Look, Emeka," he said to the younger man, his son, as Adaobi recalled. "How kind of them to send us the prettiest one." Emeka chuckled. "Though she probably can't even read the menu, can she, father?" Both laughed. Adaobi maintained her professional smile, though inside she felt as if needles were being driven into her chest. She had learned to endure these kinds of comments. She had learned that responding only made things worse. "What would you like to drink?" she repeated in a calm voice. Chief Obinna took the menu and pretended to study it with exaggerated attention. Then he looked at his son with a smile that boded no good. "You know, Emeka, I haven't had fun in a while. This girl seems like the type who barely finished secondary school. I bet she knows nothing beyond." "Yes, sir, and thank you for the tip." "Father, don't be cruel," Emeka said with false compassion. "Surely she can count. How else would she calculate the tips we never give her?" More laughter. Adaobi gripped the pen in her hand so tightly that her knuckles turned white, but her face remained impassive. And then, Chief Obinna did something that would change everything. He leaned forward with that predatory smile he used in Millionaire negotiations and began to speak in German. Not just any German, formal, technical, deliberately complex German. "Ich möchte eine Flasche von eurem teuersten Wein bestellen." aber ich bezweifle, dass dieses arme Mädchen überhaupt versteht, was ich sage. Wahrscheinlich denkt sie, ich spreche Chinesisch. I would like to order a bottle of your most expensive wine, but I doubt this poor girl even understands what I'm saying. She probably thinks I'm speaking Chinese. Adaobi clearly heard every word, every derogatory nuance. He had said he wanted a bottle of the most expensive wine, but doubted this poor girl understood what he was saying. She probably thought he spoke Chinese. Emeka burst into laughter, slamming his palm on the table. Father, you're terrible. Look at her face. She has no idea what you said. Of course not. Chief Obinna leaned back in his chair, visibly pleased with himself. These people barely know English. German, please. You'd need a real education for that, one she clearly never had. Adaobi remained motionless. Her heart pounded, but not from shame. It was something different, something she had learned to control for years of practice, because Adaobi had understood every word, every insult, disguised as a foreign language, but she said nothing. Not yet. See? Chief Obinna pointed at her as if she were a specimen for study. She doesn't even blink. She's probably thinking about what Nollywood film she'll watch when she gets to her miserable little house. Adaobi breathed deeply. Her Mama Ngozi's words resonated in her mind, like an echo from the past. True power isn't in showing what you know, but knowing when to show it. Mama Ngozi, her grandmother, the woman who had taught her everything she knew, the woman who for decades had worked as a translator for international organizations, but had never received official recognition because she lacked university degrees. The woman who spoke 9 languages fluently and had passed that gift on to Adaobi since she was a child. 7 languages. Adaobi spoke 7 languages with perfect fluency. English, Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, French, German, and Swahili. Each learned in her grandmother's small parlor, on long nights, listening to recordings, in the worn books her grandmother kept like treasures. But no one knew because Adaobi had learned that in a world that judged by appearances, showing your cards too soon was a fatal mistake. Well, Chief Obinna switched to English with a bored expression. Since it's obvious you don't understand anything useful, I'll tell you simply. Bring us a bottle of the Chateau Margaux 2005, and make sure it's at the right temperature, if they even know what that means here. Of course, sir. I'll be right back. Adaobi retreated with measured steps, her mind processing everything that had just happened. It wasn't the first time she had been humiliated, nor would it be the last. But something in the deliberate cruelty of that man, in his need to feel superior by using a language he thought she didn't understand, ignited something within her. In the kitchen, Chef Dele waited for her with a worried expression. I saw your face when you came back. What did those men do to you? Nothing I haven't heard before. Adaobi, you don't have to put up with this. There are other jobs. There are no other jobs that pay enough for my Mama Ngozi's medication, Chef. You know that. Chef Dele sighed. He knew Adaobi's situation. He knew her grandmother was ill, that medical bills were piling up, that Adaobi worked double shifts to survive. What did they say to you? Adaobi hesitated for a moment. The older one spoke in German. He thought I wouldn't understand. He said horrible things about me. Chef Dele's eyes widened. And you? I understood every word. A heavy silence fell between them. Chef Dele knew some things about Adaobi that others didn't. He knew she was different, special in some way, that she never fully explained. What are you going to do? Adaobi picked up the bottle of wine Chief Obinna had requested and placed it on the tray. For now, my job. Afterwards, we'll see. She returned to the table with the bottle, showing it to Chief Obinna as protocol dictated. He barely looked at her, making a dismissive gesture with his hand for her to serve. As Adaobi poured the wine with perfect precision, Chief Obinna spoke again in German to his son. Sie sind ihre Hände an rau und abgenutzt. Das ist das Leben der Unterschicht. Arbeiten, bis sie sterben, ohne jemals etwas Wichtiges zu erreichen. Her hands are rough and worn. That's the life of the lower class. Work until they die, without ever achieving anything important. He was commenting on Adaobi's hands, saying they were rough and worn, that this was the life of the lower class, to work until they died without achieving anything important. Emeka nodded, adding in the same language. Wenigstens hat sie ein hübsches Gesicht, wahrscheinlich das einzige, was sie am Leben hat. At least she has a pretty face. Probably the only thing she has in life. Adaobi finished serving, maintaining her neutral expression, but inside, something was changing. A decision was forming, one she had avoided for years, but that now seemed inevitable. Would you like to order dinner? She asked in perfect English. Bring the best you have, Chief Obinna said. He didn't even look at the menu. And I expect it to be truly the best. I know the owners of this place. One mistake, and you're out of a job. Understood, sir. Adaobi withdrew again, but this time she stopped in a corner of the restaurant where she could observe the table without being seen. Then Wosus continued laughing, talking in German about business, about people they had destroyed, about employees they had fired for fun. And then she heard something that made her blood run cold. Chief Obinna mentioned the name of a hospital, the same hospital where her Mama Ngozi was being treated. He spoke about an investment he was considering, about how he planned to buy part of the hospital and optimize costs, which in his language meant cutting services for patients who couldn't afford luxury treatments. Die Alten und Kranken, die sich keine Privatversicherung leisten können, sind sowieso eine Last für das System, he said coldly. Wenn wir die Kontrolle übernehmen, werden wir diese unprofitablen Abteilungen schließen. The old and sick who cannot afford private insurance are a burden on the system anyway. When we take control, we will close those unprofitable departments. Adaobi felt the world stop. Her Mama Ngozi depended on that hospital, on those unprofitable departments that this man wanted to close, on the doctors and nurses who treated patients, regardless of how much money they had. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from something deeper. A silent fury that she had kept contained throughout her life began to overflow, but she would not act impulsively. The right moment, she whispered to herself. Everything has its right moment. She returned to the kitchen, where Mrs. Adebayo, the manager, awaited her with a serious expression. Adaobi, Chief Nwosu has asked to speak with you specifically. I don't know what you've done, but you better not have ruined anything. Adaobi's heart quickened. Had they discovered her? Had they noticed something in her expression that betrayed her understanding? She walked towards the table with firm steps, preparing for whatever came. Chief Obinna awaited her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Sit down, he ordered, pointing to an empty chair. Sir, employees can't, I said. Sit down. Adaobi obeyed slowly, feeling the stares of the entire restaurant on her. This was unusual, completely out of protocol. Chief Obinna leaned forward, studying her as if she were an insect under a microscope. My son and I have been observing you all night. There's something different about you, something I can't identify. And that bothers me because I always identify people. Adaobi didn't respond, just looked him directly in the eyes, something that clearly made him uncomfortable. I'm going to make you an offer, Chief Obinna continued. I need staff for my restaurants. People who know how to serve, who are discreet, who don't cause problems. I'd pay triple what you earn here. It was a trap. Adaobi knew it. Men like Chief Obinna didn't make generous offers without expecting something in return. That's very kind, sir, but I'm fine where I am. Chief Obinna's smile froze. No one said no to him. Pardon? I said I appreciate the offer, but I prefer to stay here. Emeka let out an incredulous laugh. Did you hear that, father? The waitress is rejecting your offer. Chief Obinna narrowed his eyes. I think you don't understand your position, girl. I'm not asking. I'm telling you what you're going to do. And I'm telling you, with all due respect, that my answer is no. The silence that followed was so dense it could be cut with a knife. Nearby diners had stopped talking, observing the scene with a mixture of horror and fascination. Chief Obinna slowly stood up, his imposing height casting a shadow over Adaobi. You're going to regret this. His voice was low, dangerous. No one says no to me, especially someone like you. Adaobi also stood, surprising herself with her own audacity. Someone like me? She repeated. And what am I exactly? Chief Nwosu? A nobody. A waitress who doesn't know her place in the world. Adaobi smiled for the first time all night. She smiled genuinely. You're right about one thing, sir. I'm a waitress. But you're wrong about everything else. She turned to leave, but Chief Obinna's voice stopped her. Du wirst bereuen, zur Arbeit gekommen zu sein. Ich werde dafür sorgen, dass du nie wieder in dieser Stadt arbeitest. You will regret having come to work. I will make sure you never work in this city again. Adaobi stopped, her back to him, her heart pounding. The moment had arrived. She turned slowly, looking him directly in the eyes. And then, in perfect German with an impeccable accent, she replied, Ich verstehe jedes Wort, das Sie heute Nacht gesagt haben, Herrn Wosu, jede Beleidigung, jeden Plan. Und ich verspreche Ihnen, der Einzige, der etwas bereuen wird, sind Sie. I understand every word you have said tonight, Chief Nwosu. Every insult, every plan. And I promise you, the only one who will regret anything will be you. The expression on Chief Obinna's face was something Adaobi would never forget. The color drained from his face. His eyes widened with a mixture of shock and disbelief. Emeka dropped his wine glass. the red liquid spilling over the white tablecloth like blood on snow. Adaobi turned and walked towards the kitchen, leaving behind the stunned silence of the city's most exclusive restaurant. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know what consequences her actions would have, but for the first time in a long time, she felt free. What she didn't know was that that night was just the beginning, that Chief Obinna Nwosu was not the type of man who accepted being humiliated, and that the war that had just begun would reveal secrets that would change not only her life, but the lives of everyone involved. Because in that restaurant, under the crystal chandeliers, a spark had ignited that would soon become a fire, and Adaobi Namdi was ready to burn. The kitchen doors closed behind Adaobi, with a dull thud that resonated like the end of one chapter and the beginning of a much darker one. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her temples, in her wrists, in every corner of her body that trembled with a mixture of adrenaline and terror. What had she done? Chef Dele was the first to reach her side, taking her shoulders with firm hands. "Adaobi, what happened out there? The whole restaurant is silent. I've never seen anything like it." I answered him. Adaobi's voice came out barely as a whisper. In German. I told him I understood everything. Chef Dele's eyes widened. "You answered Chief Obinna Nwosu to his face, in German?" Before Adaobi could respond, the kitchen doors burst open violently. Mrs. Funke Adebayo, the manager, entered with a face distorted by fury and panic. "Adaobi, what on earth did you do? Chief Nwosu is furious. He's demanding to speak with the owners right now." Mrs. Adebayo. He was humiliating me. He thought I didn't understand, and I don't care what he thought. Mrs. Adebayo interrupted her sharply. "Do you have any idea who that man is? Do you have the slightest idea what he can do to us?" Adaobi felt the kitchen walls closing in on her. The other employees looked at her with expressions ranging from compassion to resentment. Some seemed admired by what she had done, but most were simply scared. Mrs. Adebayo, Chef Dele, intervened. "Whatever happened, Adaobi is one of our best employees. We can't." "Silence, Chef Dele. This is none of your business." Mrs. Adebayo turned to Adaobi with eyes that distilled coldness. "You are suspended, without pay, until the owners decide what to do with you. Now, leave through the back door. I don't want Chief Nwosu to see you leave." Adaobi felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Suspended, without pay. The words echoed in her mind as she thought of her Mama Ngozi's medicines, the outstanding bills, the rent she had to pay in days. "Mrs. Adebayo, please, I need this job. My grandmother is sick." And you should have thought of that before deciding to play the hero. Mrs. Adebayo pointed towards the back door. "Out. Now." Adaobi looked for Chef Dele's eyes, hoping to find some support, but he could only lower his gaze helplessly. There was nothing he could do, not against the manager, not against the weight of the Nwosu name. With trembling hands, Adaobi removed her apron and left it on the stainless steel table. She walked towards the back door, feeling each step as if she were walking towards a precipice. Outside, the alley was dark and smelled of garbage and dampness. Adaobi leaned against the brick wall, letting the tears she had held back finally run down her cheeks. What was she going to do now? Her phone vibrated in her pocket. It was a text message from an unknown number. "You made a very serious mistake tonight, and mistakes are paid for. Sincerely, someone who will be watching you." A shiver ran down her spine. Chief Obinna, Emeka, someone who worked for them. The message was clearly a threat, but what could they do to her that they hadn't already? The answer would come sooner than she imagined. Adaobi walked through the empty streets towards the bus stop. At that hour, public transport was scarce, and she had to wait almost 40 minutes in the dark, constantly looking over her shoulder, feeling that someone was watching her from the shadows. When she finally arrived at her small Face Me, I Face You apartment on the outskirts of the city, she found her Mama Ngozi awake, sitting in her favorite chair by the window, looking at the distant city lights. "You're early, my child." Mama Ngozi's voice was weak but warm, as always. Did something happen? Adaobi knelt beside her grandmother, taking her wrinkled hands in hers. How to tell her the truth? How to explain that she had lost the job that allowed them to survive? "Mama, I did something tonight. Something I perhaps shouldn't have done." Mama Ngozi's eyes, though tired by illness, shone with that sharp intelligence that age had not managed to extinguish. "Tell me everything, Adaobi, without omitting anything." And Adaobi did. She told her about the Nwosus, about the humiliations in German, about the plans to buy the hospital, about her response and the consequences that followed. When she finished, she expected to see disappointment on her grandmother's face. Instead, She saw pride. "You did well, my child." Mama Ngozi squeezed Adaobi's hands with surprising strength. "You did exactly what you had to do. But Mama, I lost my job. I don't know how we're going to." "Listen to me," Mama Ngozi interrupted her firmly. "I spent my whole life keeping quiet, my whole life being invisible so that people like that Nwosu could feel superior. I translated for ambassadors, for presidents, for people who governed entire countries, and none of them knew my name. None thanked me. None saw beyond the woman who served coffee and translated their words. Tears now ran down both their cheeks. I don't want that for you, Adaobi. I don't want you to live your life in silence. You have a gift that I gave you with all my love. And that gift is not to be hidden. It is to be used, to defend yourself, to defend others who cannot defend themselves." Adaobi hugged her grandmother, feeling the fragile body under her arms, the bones that protruded where there had once been firm flesh, the heart that beat weakly, but with unwavering determination. "I'm scared, Mama. That man has power. He can destroy us. Power without honor is just noise, my child, and noise, no matter how loud, eventually fades away." That night, Adaobi could barely sleep. Her mind replayed the events of the restaurant again and again. Chief Obinna's words, the threat of the text message, the uncertainty of the future. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the millionaire's face transforming from mockery to fury when she spoke in German. The next day, the reality of her situation became even clearer. When she tried to call the restaurant to speak with Mrs. Adebayo, no one answered. When she went personally, the security guard prevented her from entering, saying she was no longer welcome. "I'm sorry, madame." The guard, an older man who had always treated her well, seemed genuinely apologetic. "Orders from above. I can't let you in. But my things? My last pay? They told me they'll send it by mail along with your termination letter." Termination letter. Not just suspended. Fired. Adaobi walked through the city in a state of bewilderment. What was she going to do now? She had savings for perhaps 2 weeks. After that, she didn't want to think about after. Her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize, but different from the threat of last night. Adaobi Namdi? A masculine, professional, cold voice. "Yes, this is she. This is Barrister Olumide Coker, attorney for Nwosu Holdings Group. My client wishes to meet with you this afternoon. It's a matter of urgent nature." Adaobi's heart stopped for a second. "Meet with me? For what?" "That will be discussed in person. You have an hour to present yourself at the corporate offices of Nwosu Holdings Group. The address will be sent to you by message. I strongly suggest you do not miss it." The call cut off before Adaobi could respond. Minutes later, she received the address, an office building in the financial district, the kind of place where people like her normally only entered to clean floors. Part of her wanted to ignore the summons, but another part, the part her grandmother had raised to never run from problems, knew she had to go. She had to know what they wanted. She had to face whatever came. She changed into the best clothes she had. A simple white blouse, a dark skirt, shoes she had bought from a second-hand store, but which still looked presentable. She looked at her reflection in the mirror and breathed deeply. "I can do this," she whispered. "I can do this." The Nwosu Holdings Group building was a tower of glass and steel that rose towards the sky like a monument to the power of money. Adaobi entered through the revolving doors and found herself in a lobby that was larger than her entire apartment. The receptionist, an impeccably dressed woman with a professional bored expression, looked her up and down with that scrutiny Adaobi knew too well. "May I help you?" "I have an appointment. My name is Adaobi Namdi." Something changed in the receptionist's expression. Recognition, curiosity, pity. "Of course, they're waiting for you. Floor 27. The elevators are to your right." The elevator ascended in silence, the numbers changing on the digital screen like a countdown to something inevitable. When the doors opened on the 27th floor, Adaobi found herself in front of another receptionist, this one even more intimidating than the previous one. "Miss Namdi, this way, please." She was guided down a hallway with walls covered in art that probably cost more than Adaobi would earn in her entire life. At the end of the hallway was a double dark wood door. The receptionist knocked gently, and a voice from inside said, "Come in." Chief Obinna Nwosu's office was exactly what Adaobi expected. Enormous, ostentatious, designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city spread below like a kingdom waiting to be conquered. And there he was, sitting behind a mahogany desk that looked like an altar to his own ego. Beside him, Emeka, with that same contemptuous smile from the night before, And in a corner, a man in a grey suit, who must have been the lawyer who had called her. Miss Namdi. Chief Obinna did not stand, nor did he make a gesture to greet her. How kind of you to accept our invitation. It didn't sound like an invitation, it sounded like an order. Emeka let out a laugh, but his father raised a hand to silence him. Direct. I like that. Although sincerity can be dangerous when one lacks the power to back it up. Chief Obinna leaned back in his chair. But I didn't call you to exchange pleasantries. I called you because we have a problem. And problems, in my experience, have two solutions. They are eliminated, or they are controlled. Adaobi felt a chill, but maintained her neutral expression. And I am a problem for you? You have been since last night. You see, I don't care that you understand German. In fact, it's impressive. But what I do care about is that you heard things you shouldn't have heard. Adaobi's heart quickened. The plans about the hospital, the business conversations. What else might Chief Obinna have said, thinking no one understood? I don't know what you're referring to. Of course you do. Chief Obinna leaned forward. You heard about my plans for St. Michael's General Hospital. Plans that are confidential. Plans that could be affected if someone with the wrong contacts found out ahead of time. I don't have contacts of any kind. I'm just a waitress. You were a waitress, Emeka intervened with malice. Now you are nothing. Emeka. Silence. Chief Obinna did not take his eyes off Adaobi. Here is my offer, Ms. Namdi, unique and non-negotiable. You will sign a confidentiality agreement. You will not talk to anyone about what you heard last night. In return, you will receive generous compensation, enough to pay for your grandmother's treatment for a year, and a letter of recommendation that will open doors for you in any restaurant in this city. Adaobi blinked. How did he know about her? Mama Ngozi. How did he know about the treatment? I see you're surprised I know about your Mama Ngozi. Chief Obinna smiled without warmth. I did my research this morning. I know where you live. I know where she receives treatment. I know how much you owe in medical bills. Knowledge is power, Miss Namdi, and I have plenty of both. The lawyer approached with a folder, placing it on the desk in front of Adaobi. Inside were several pages of documents and a check. Adaobi looked at the check. The amount was more money than she had ever seen in her life. Enough to pay for everything, enough to breathe easy for the first time in years. But something wasn't right. Something in Chief Obinna's expression, something in the way Emeka looked at her with anticipation, as if they expected her to fall into a trap. And if I don't sign? The silence that followed was heavy, laden with unpronounced threats. If you don't sign, Chief Obinna spoke slowly, savoring each word. I will make your life impossible. You already lost your job at the Golden Palm. I can ensure that you don't work in any restaurant in this city, in this country, if I set my mind to it. And your grandmother's treatment at St. Michael's? Well, let's just say that when I complete my acquisition of the hospital, certain patients might find their beds are no longer available. Adaobi felt nauseous. It wasn't an offer. It was blackmail, extortion, disguised as generosity. You're threatening me. I'm giving you options. There's a difference. Adaobi's hands trembled as she looked at the document. The words swam before her eyes. Legal clauses, complicated terms, all designed to silence her permanently. She thought of her Mama Ngozi, of her smile when she said she was proud, of her words about not living life in silence. She thought of the voices she had heard Chief Obinna mention, the people who would be affected if he bought the hospital, the patients who would lose their care, the families who would suffer. She thought of everything she had learned throughout her life, every language, every word, every lesson, about dignity and courage. And she made a decision. No, she said with a firm voice. Chief Obinna frowned. Excuse me? I said no. I'm not signing this. Emeka stood up. Are you mad? Do you have any idea what you're rejecting? I have a perfect idea. Adaobi also stood up, looking directly into Chief Obinna's eyes. I am refusing to be bought. I am refusing to be silenced, and I am refusing to be part of whatever it is you people plan to do with that hospital. You are going to regret this. Chief Obinna's voice was pure ice. I am going to destroy you and everything you care about. Adaobi walked towards the door, but before leaving, she turned one last time. Herr Nwosu, she said, in perfect German. Sie haben ihr ganzes Leben lang Menschen wie mich unterdrückt, aber diesmal haben sie sich mit der falschen Person angelegt. Ich werde nicht schweigen, und wenn ich falle, werde ich nicht allein fallen. Chief Nwosu, all your life you have oppressed people like me, but this time you have messed with the wrong person. I will not be silent, and if I fall, I will not fall alone. She left the office without looking back, her heart pounding, her legs barely supporting her. She didn't know how she was going to keep that promise. She didn't know what resources she had against a man with the power of Chief Obinna Nwosu, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The war had officially begun, and Adaobi Nnamdi had no intention of losing it. What she didn't know was that same afternoon, while she returned home to hug her Mama Ngozi and plan her next move, Chief Obinna Nwosu was making a call that would change everything. "I need you to investigate that girl thoroughly," he said into the phone with an icy voice. "I want to know every secret, every weakness, every person she cares about, and when you have everything, we will destroy her completely." On his computer screen shone a photo of Adaobi taken by the building's security cameras, and next to it, a photo of Mama Ngozi entering St. Michael's General Hospital for her weekly treatment. The battle for dignity was about to become a fight for survival. The road back home was the longest Adaobi had ever traveled in her life. Each step weighed like lead. Each breath was a conscious effort not to collapse in the middle of the street. She had defied a giant, and now that giant was preparing to crush her. When she opened the door of her small apartment, she found something she didn't expect. Her Mama Ngozi was not in her chair by the window. She was standing, leaning on her walking stick, with an old suitcase open on the bed. "Mama, what are you doing? You shouldn't be up for so long." "I'm looking for something, my child." Mama Ngozi spoke with a determination Adaobi hadn't heard in months. "Something I should have shown you a long time ago." Adaobi approached, worried about the effort her grandmother was making. Illness had weakened her body, but clearly had not touched her spirit. "Mama, please sit down. Whatever it is, I can look for it." "No, I have to find this myself." Mama Ngozi's wrinkled hands rummaged through the contents of the suitcase. Yellowed papers, old photographs, letters in envelopes worn by time. Finally, her fingers closed around a worn but carefully preserved brown leather folder. "Here it is." Mama Ngozi dropped onto the bed, breathing with difficulty. "Sit down, Adaobi. What I'm about to tell you will change everything you think you know about our family." Adaobi obeyed, her heart pounding with a mixture of curiosity and fear. What secrets could her grandmother be hiding? What did it have to do with what was happening now? "Many years ago, before you were born, I worked as a translator for diplomatic families," Mama Ngozi began, her voice transporting them to past decades. "I had no degrees, but I spoke 9 languages. I learned them the same way I taught you, by listening, practicing, living among people from all over the world. I already know that, Mama. What you don't know is who I worked for during the last years of my career as a translator." Mama Ngozi opened the folder and took out a black and white photograph. In it, a much younger version of herself, elegantly dressed, stood next to a man in a suit whom Adaobi did not recognize. This man was Chief Emeka Nwosu, Sr., Chief Obinna's father. Adaobi felt as if the ground opened beneath her feet. "You worked for the Nwosus?" "For 5 years. I was his personal translator in all international negotiations. Chief Emeka, Sr. I built his empire with my help, translating contracts, closing deals, facilitating communications with partners from all over the world." Tears began to form in Mama Ngozi's eyes as she continued. Chief Emeka, Sr., was different from his son. He was ambitious, yes, but he had honor. He treated me with respect. He even promised me that when he retired, he would give me a share of the profits from the businesses I had helped build. I had signed documents, legal agreements. And what happened? Chief Emeka, Sr., died suddenly. A heart attack, they said. And when I went to claim what was mine, I met Chief Obinna. He was barely 25 then, but he was already the cruel man you know now. Mama Ngozi took another document from the folder. It was a contract with official signatures and seals. "This is the original agreement. Chief Emeka promised me 5% of Nwosu Holdings Group's profits as compensation for my years of service. But when I showed it to Chief Obinna, he laughed in my face." Mama Ngozi's voice cracked with the memory. "He told me that a housemaid had no right to anything, that if I tried to claim it legally, he would use all his power to destroy me. And he did. He hired lawyers who invalidated the contract, claiming I had no legal capacity to sign agreements of that nature. They took everything from me. My reputation, my savings, my dignity." Adaobi took her grandmother's hands, feeling the injustice of decades concentrating in that moment. "Why did you never tell me?" "Because I was ashamed. Ashamed of having been so naive. Ashamed of not having been able to defend myself. And fear, Adaobi. Fear that if someday you crossed paths with the Nwosus, they would discover who you were and harm you. But now they know who I am." "Exactly." Mama Ngozi squeezed Adaobi's hands tightly. That's why you need to know the full truth. Because there's something else in this folder. Something Chief Obinna doesn't know I have. She pulled out a thick envelope sealed with ancient wax. During my years working for Chief Emeka, Senior, I translated many documents. Some of them were delicate. Businesses that weren't exactly legal. Agreements with people who preferred to remain in the shadows. What kind of businesses? The kind that would destroy the reputation of Nwosu Holdings Group if they came to light. Chief Emeka, Senior, made me swear I would never reveal what I knew, and I kept my promise while he lived. But Chief Obinna broke all the promises his father made me, so I no longer have an obligation to keep their secrets. Adaobi looked at the envelope as if it contained a bomb. In a sense, it was. Mama, are you sure about this? If Chief Obinna finds out you have this, I no longer care what happens to me, Adaobi. I'm old. I'm sick. But you have a whole life ahead of you, and I won't let that man take it from you as he took mine. Adaobi's phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Adaobi Namdi? A feminine voice, professional, but warm. Yes, who is this? My name is Aisha Bello. I'm a journalist from the National Daily. I heard about what happened at the Golden Palm last night. I'd like to speak with you. Adaobi's heart quickened. How had a journalist found out so quickly? How did she get her number? I have my sources, but that's not what's important. What's important is that I have information about Chief Obinna Nwosu that I think will interest you, and I believe you have information that interests me. Can we meet? Adaobi looked at her grandmother, who had heard the entire conversation. Mama Ngozi nodded slowly. Where and when? Tomorrow, at the Oasis Cafe, near the Central Plaza, at 10 a.m. And Miss Namdi, come alone and don't tell anyone about this call. The communication cut off. Adaobi stared at the phone, processing what had just happened. Who was it? Mama Ngozi asked. A journalist. She says she has information about the Nwosus. It could be a trap, I know, but it could also be our only chance. That night, Adaobi couldn't sleep. Her mind was a whirlwind of questions, fears, and possibilities. She read the documents her grandmother had given her, each page revealing a story of corruption, manipulation, and cruelty that stretched back decades. But there was something else among the papers, something her grandmother hadn't mentioned directly. A letter written in German addressed to Chief Emeka Senior, from a European business partner. The letter spoke of a secret agreement, of money transferred to offshore accounts, of political favors bought and sold. Adaobi translated every word, feeling the puzzle begin to take shape. The Nwosus hadn't built their empire solely with hard work and business acumen. They had built it on lies, bribes, and the exploitation of people like her grandmother. The next morning, Adaobi prepared for the meeting with the journalist. Before leaving, her grandmother stopped her. Take this with you. She handed her a small silver medallion. It was your mother's. She also had your courage. Amaka died young, but she lived without fear. I want you to remember that today. Adaobi hugged her grandmother tightly, feeling the fragility of her body, but also the strength of her spirit. I'll be back soon, Mama, I promise. I know you will, my child, but if something goes wrong, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. I always was, from the day you were born. The Oasis Cafe was a modest place on a quiet corner of the city. Small tables, walls decorated with old photographs, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee floating in the air. Adaobi arrived 10 minutes before the agreed time and chose a table in the corner from where she could see the entrance door. Aisha Bello arrived punctually. She was a woman in her 40s with dark hair pulled back in a practical bun and eyes that seemed to analyze everything around her. She was dressed simply but professionally and carried a leather briefcase worn by use. Miss Namdi, she sat opposite Adaobi without preamble. Thank you for coming. Before we talk about anything, I need to know how you found out what happened. Aisha smiled slightly. I have a source inside the Golden Palm, someone who witnessed everything that happened that night, and who is very tired of seeing how the Nwosus treat people. Who? That I cannot reveal. Source protection. But what I can tell you is that it's not the first time Chief Obinna Nwosu has humiliated employees in that way, and it's not the first time he's destroyed the life of someone who dared to challenge him. Aisha opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. I've been investigating Nwosu Holdings Group for 3 years. I have testimonies from unjustly dismissed former employees, from competitors ruined by illegal tactics, from public officials bribed to favor their businesses. But I've never been able to publish anything because every time I get too close, someone threatens me or my sources disappear. Disappear? Not literally, but they suddenly change their minds, move out of town, decide they don't want to talk anymore. The power of the Nwosus reaches very far, Miss Namdi, farther than you imagine. Adaobi thought of the documents her grandmother had given her. The letters, the contracts, the secrets of decades. Why are you looking for me? Because you did something no one else has done. You confronted him publicly. And not only that, you confronted him in his own language. Literally. That makes you a symbol, and symbols are powerful. I don't want to be a symbol. I just want to protect my family. I understand that. But sometimes the best way to protect our family is by exposing those who threaten us. Aisha leaned forward. Miss Namdi, I am preparing a report that could destroy the Nwosus, but I need more evidence. Solid evidence that they cannot deny or buy. Do you have something like that? Adaobi hesitated. Trusting a stranger was risky, but going it alone against the Nwosus was suicide. I have documents, she said finally. Documents my grandmother kept for decades. Contracts, letters, agreements that prove illegal activities. Aisha's eyes gleamed with interest. What kind of activities? Bribery, tax evasion, agreements with people who operated outside the law. All translated and documented by my grandmother when she worked for Chief Emeka Sr. Your grandmother worked for the Nwosus for 5 years, and when Chief Emeka Sr. died, Chief Obinna stripped her of everything that was legally hers. Aisha leaned back in her chair, processing the information. This is bigger than I thought. Much bigger. There's something else. Adaobi breathed deeply. Chief Obinna is planning to buy Michael's General Hospital. He wants to close the departments that serve indigent patients. My grandmother receives treatment there. Do you have proof of that? I heard it directly from his mouth in German. He thought no one understood. Aisha pulled a recorder from her briefcase. Would you be willing to give a recorded testimony? To tell everything you know, including about your grandmother? Adaobi thought of Mama Ngozi, of her tired but proud smile, of the decades of silence she had endured, of the opportunity to finally do justice. Yes, I am willing. For the next 2 hours, Adaobi spoke, telling everything. The night at the restaurant, the humiliations in German, the meeting at the Nwosu Holdings Group offices, the blackmail, the threats, and then she told her grandmother's story. Every word was like lifting a weight from her soul. When she finished, Aisha put away the recorder with a serious but hopeful expression. This is enough to start, but I need to see those original documents. Can you get them for me? I'll have to speak with my grandmother. They are hers, not mine. I understand, but do it soon. The Nwosus won't stay put. If they discover we're working together, they'll try to stop us. Adaobi nodded, getting up to leave, but before she could take a step, Aisha stopped her. One more thing, Miss Namdi. Last night I received an anonymous call. Someone warned me to be careful with you, that you were dangerous, unstable, that nothing you said could be trusted. Adaobi's stomach churned. Who called? They didn't leave a name, but I recognized the number. It was from Emeka Nwosu's personal cell phone, so it was him. Emeka had been the one who sent the threatening message the night of the restaurant. Emeka was trying to discredit her before she could defend herself. And why did you decide to meet with me anyway? Aisha smiled. Because in my experience, when someone like Emeka Nwosu tries to destroy a person's reputation before even meeting them, it means that person has something they fear. And I want to know what it is. Adaobi left the cafe with a mixture of hope and terror. She had an ally, she had a plan, but she also had powerful enemies who were willing to do anything to silence her. As she walked towards the bus stop, her phone vibrated with a text message. It was from Chef Dele. Adaobi, I urgently need to see you. I discovered something about the Nwosus that you must know. It's about your grandmother. Please come to the restaurant after 11 p.m. when it's closed. Enter through the back door. It's important. Adaobi read the message 3 times. What could Chef Dele know about her grandmother? Why such urgency and secrecy? Something wasn't right, but at the same time, Chef Dele had always been kind to her, always protected her. She could trust him. She could trust someone. What Adaobi didn't know was that at that very moment in the offices of Nwosu Holdings Group, Chief Obinna was receiving the report from the investigation he had ordered. And what that report contained not only revealed who Adaobi Namdi really was, it revealed a secret that connected the two families in a way no one would have imagined. A secret that if it came to light would destroy much more than reputations, it would destroy lives. The clock struck 10:40 p.m. when Adaobi got off the bus 2 blocks from the Golden Palm. The streets were almost empty, barely illuminated by streetlights that cast long shadows on the damp pavement. It had rained during the afternoon, and the air still smelled of wet earth and asphalt. Every step she took towards the restaurant increased the unease in her chest. Chef Daly's message kept replaying in her mind. What could he know about her, Mama Ngozi? Why so much mystery? Why meet in secret after closing? Before leaving home, Adaobi had hesitated. Mama Ngozi noticed her unease. Where are you going at this hour, my child? Chef Dele asked to meet. He says he has important information. The chef. Mama Ngozi frowned. And why can't he tell you over the phone? I don't know, Mama, but Chef Dele was always good to me. I trust him. Mama Ngozi had looked at her with those eyes that seemed to see beyond words. Be careful, Adaobi. In times of war, even friends can unintentionally become enemies. Adaobi had promised to be cautious, but now, standing in front of the alley that led to the back door of the restaurant, her grandmother's words resonated like a warning she perhaps should have heeded more carefully. The alley was dark. The only light came from a lamp above the back door that flickered intermittently as if it were about to go out. Adaobi walked slowly, her senses alert, her heart beating faster and faster. The door was ajar. Chef Dele, she called softly, pushing the door open carefully. The kitchen was in shadows. The stainless steel surfaces gleamed faintly under the emergency light that always remained on. Everything was silent. Too silent. Chef Dele, are you here? A noise to her right made her spin sharply. A figure emerged from the shadows, but it wasn't Chef Dele, it was Emeka Nwosu. Adaobi's heart stopped for a second before beginning to beat with uncontrolled force. She instinctively backed away, but another figure appeared behind her, blocking the exit. Chief Obinna Nwosu. Good evening, Miss Nnamdi. Chief Obinna's voice was soft, almost kind, which made it even more terrifying. How kind of you to accept our invitation. Where is Chef Dele? Adaobi managed to ask, her voice trembling despite her efforts to remain calm. The chef? Emeka let out a contemptuous laugh. He's at home, sleeping peacefully. He has no idea we used his name to lure you here. The message had been a trap from the beginning. Adaobi felt nauseous as she realized how easily she had fallen. What do you want from me? Chief Obinna walked slowly towards her, his shoes echoing on the kitchen floor with each step. What I want, Miss Nnamdi, is to understand something that has been bothering me since I received a certain report this afternoon. He pulled an envelope from his inner pocket. You see, when I ordered an investigation into you, I expected to find the usual: debts, family problems, perhaps some embarrassing secret I could use to pressure you. But what I found was much more interesting. He opened the envelope and took out several documents. Did you know that your mother, Emeka Nnamdi, worked briefly for my father many years ago? Before you were born? Adaobi felt as if the ground moved beneath her feet. Her mother, she had never known much about her. Mama Ngozi rarely spoke of Emeka, and when she did, it was with such profound sadness that Adaobi had learned not to ask. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course not, because your grandmother took care to erase that part of the story. Chief Obinna smiled coldly. Your mother was beautiful, according to the records, intelligent too. My father hired her as a personal assistant when she was barely 19. Mama Ngozi already worked for us then, translating documents. I suppose it was she who recommended her daughter. Where are you going with this? To the truth, Miss Nnamdi. To the truth your grandmother has hidden from you your entire life. Emeka approached from behind, too close for Adaobi's liking. She could feel his breath on her neck, his menacing presence. My father was a man of diverse appetites, Chief Obinna continued, and your mother was young, vulnerable, alone in the world, except for her mother, Mama Ngozi. It's not hard to imagine what happened. You're lying! Adaobi's voice came out stronger than she expected. My mother died when I was a baby, in an accident. That's what Mama Ngozi told you. Chief Obinna shook his head with false compassion. How convenient. The truth is much more complicated. Your mother didn't die in an accident, Miss Nnamdi. Your mother disappeared. She left one night without a trace, leaving you with Mama Ngozi. And the reason she left, well, that has to do directly with my family. Adaobi felt the world spinning around her. Her mother hadn't died. Mama Ngozi had lied to her all her life. I don't believe you, she said, though her voice no longer sounded so sure. You don't have to believe me. You can ask your grandmother directly, but before you do, allow me to show you something else. He pulled a photograph from the envelope. It was old, yellowed by time. In it, a young woman appeared, beautiful, with eyes Adaobi recognized immediately because she saw them every day in the mirror, her mother. But she wasn't alone in the photo. Next to her, with his arm around her shoulders, was a man Adaobi also recognized. Chief Emeka Nwosu, Sr., Chief Obinna's father. Your mother and my father had a relationship, Miss Nnamdi, a relationship that lasted almost 2 years, and when it ended, Well, let's just say the consequences were permanent. The meaning of his words took a moment to penetrate Adaobi's mind. When it did, she felt as if her heart had been ripped from her chest. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible." "Not possible?" Chief Obinna laughed softly. "Genetics doesn't lie. Did you never wonder where your knack for languages came from? Mama Ngozi speaks 9. It's true, but my father spoke 12. He was a linguistic genius, a gift he clearly passed on to you." "You're lying!" Adaobi screamed, tears starting to stream down her cheeks. "This is all a lie to manipulate me." "A lie?" Chief Obinna pulled out another document. "This is a DNA analysis my father ordered over 20 years ago. He compared his blood with your mother's when she became pregnant. He wanted to be sure before making certain decisions. He showed the paper to Adaobi. Numbers, percentages, scientific terms she could barely process in her state of shock. According to this analysis, there is a 99% probability that Chief Emeka Nwosu, Senior, was your biological father, Miss Nnamdi, which means that you and I are siblings." The silence that followed was absolute. Adaobi couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even breathe. The world, as she knew it, had collapsed in a matter of minutes. "Of course," Chief Obinna continued in a casual tone. "My father never officially recognized you. When he discovered the pregnancy, he offered your mother money to disappear. Amaka rejected the money, but she disappeared shortly after you were born anyway. No one knows exactly what happened to her. Some say she fled, others have darker theories." "What did you do to her?" Adaobi finally found her voice, hoarse with tears. "What did you do to my mother?" "I didn't do anything to her. I was a child then. But my father was a man who protected his legacy at any cost. An illegitimate child, especially a daughter, would have been a scandal, a stain on his perfect reputation." Emeka spoke for the first time since he had revealed his presence. "The irony is that all these years, my grandfather's illegitimate daughter has been serving tables in restaurants, cleaning houses, surviving on scraps, while we inherited everything that technically also belongs to you." "Shut up, Emeka." Chief Obinna gave him a warning look. "We're not here to discuss inheritances." "Then what are we here for?" Adaobi asked, wiping away her tears furiously. "To torture me with secrets from the past? To see me break down? We are here to offer you a deal." Chief Obinna put the documents back in the envelope. "Now that you know the truth, you have 2 options. The first, you keep silent about everything, about what you heard in the restaurant, about the hospital plans, about these documents. In return, I will ensure that your grandmother receives the best possible medical treatment at no cost, and you will receive a monthly amount that will allow you to live comfortably. And the second option? The second option is that you continue with your little crusade for justice, that you talk to journalists, that you try to expose me. But if you choose that path, not only will I destroy your life and your grandmother's, I will also make sure the world knows that you are an illegitimate Nwosu who is only looking for money. I will turn your story of struggle into a story of greed, and believe me, I have the resources to do it." Adaobi stared at him. This man was her brother. They shared blood. They shared a father. But they shared nothing else. He was everything she despised, everything her grandmother had taught her to reject. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why so much hatred? If what you say is true, we are family." For the first time, something changed in Chief Obinna's expression. A shadow crossed his face. Something that could have been pain or resentment. "Family? My father spent his last years obsessed with you. Not with his legitimate children, not with the empire he built, but with the daughter he had abandoned. Before he died, he confessed to me that the biggest mistake of his life was not having recognized you, that you were his true heir, not I." The bitterness in his voice was palpable. "So don't talk to me about family, Miss Nnamdi. You stole my father's love without even knowing it, and now you want to steal everything else from me." "I don't want anything from you," Adaobi said firmly. "I only want justice for my grandmother, for my mother, for all the people your family has destroyed." "Then you chose the second option." Chief Obinna made a signal, and 2 men appeared from the shadows. Bodyguards by their appearance, large, intimidating, with blank expressions of professionals accustomed to unpleasant jobs. "Escort Miss Nnamdi to her house. Make sure she understands the consequences of her decisions." Adaobi felt panic growing in her chest. What were they going to do to her? What were they going to do to her, Mama Ngozi? But before the bodyguards could touch her, a voice resonated from the kitchen door. "Stop! Police! Nobody move!" The lights flashed on, momentarily blinding everyone. Adaobi blinked, trying to understand what was happening. Several officers entered through different doors, weapons in hand, shouting orders, and behind them, with an expression of contained triumph, was Aisha Bello. "What on earth is this?" Chief Obinna roared. "This, Chief Nwosu," Aisha approached with a microphone in her hand, "is the end of your reign. Everything you just said was recorded. Every threat, every confession, every detail about what your family did to Emeka Nnamdi. That's illegal. You can't record without my consent." "Actually, yes, we can. When there is suspicion of criminal activity, the authorities can authorize surveillance. And thanks to certain documents we received this morning, we had more than enough suspicion." Chief Obinna turned to Adaobi with murderous fury in his eyes. "You knew this was going to happen?" "No." Adaobi shook her head, as surprised as he was. "I didn't know anything." "She's telling the truth," Aisha intervened. "Adaobi didn't know about the operation, but someone else did. Someone who has been waiting years to see justice." From behind, the officers emerged a figure that made Adaobi's heart stop. Mama Ngozi, her grandmother, walked slowly, leaning on her walking stick, but with her head held high and her eyes shining with a strength Adaobi had never seen. "Mama, how? When you left tonight, I knew something was wrong." Mama Ngozi spoke in a clear and firm voice. "I called Miss Bello. She contacted the authorities, and together we prepared this." She approached Chief Obinna, looking him directly in the eyes without an ounce of fear. "For 25 years I kept silent. For 25 years I carried the pain of losing my daughter because of your father. But tonight I heard everything you said, and now the world will also hear it." Chief Obinna Nwosu, for the first time in his life, was speechless. The officers began to handcuff him while he shouted about lawyers and lawsuits. Emeka tried to flee but was apprehended before reaching the door. Adaobi ran to her grandmother, hugging her tightly. "Mama, is everything he said about my mother true? About Chief Emeka, Sr.?" Mama Ngozi held her, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. "It's true, my child. All of it is true. And the time has come for you to know the whole story." Outside, the sirens of more police cars lit up the night. Inside, two women hugged as decades of secrets finally came to light. The battle was not over. It was just beginning. But for the first time, Adaobi felt she was not alone, and that made all the difference. The central police station was an old building that smelled of cold coffee and old papers. Adaobi sat in a waiting room next to her grandmother, both wrapped in blankets that a kind officer had offered them. Outside, the dawn began to paint the sky with pink and orange hues, but neither of them had slept. Aisha Bello had spent the last few hours giving statements, handing over evidence, coordinating with the prosecutors who had arrived urgently when they learned the magnitude of the case. Chief Obinna and Emeka Nwosu were in separate cells, their lawyers already working frantically to secure their bail, but for the moment they were behind bars, and that was enough. "Mama," Adaobi finally broke the silence that had enveloped them for hours. "I need to know everything about my mother. About Chief Emeka, Sr. About what really happened." Mama Ngozi closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength from somewhere deep within her soul. When she opened them, there was a mixture of pain and relief Adaobi had never seen. "Your mother was the light of my life, Adaobi. Emeka Nnamdi had your same smile, your same determination, your same inner fire. When I looked at her, I saw all the good the world could offer." Her voice trembled, but she continued. "I had been working for the Nwosus for 3 years when Emeka turned 19. She needed a job, and I thought I could protect her if she worked with me. How wrong I was." Adaobi took her grandmother's hand, feeling the fragile bones under the wrinkled skin. Chief Emeka, Sr. noticed her from the first day. It was impossible not to notice her. Emeka had that ability to light up any room she entered. At first, I thought his attentions were simply kindness from an employer towards a new employee, but soon I realized it was something more. She loved him. Mama Ngozi sighed deeply. Emeka believed she loved him, and perhaps, in his own twisted way, Chief Emeka, Sr. also loved her. But the love of men like him always comes with conditions, with limits, with secrets. She paused, looking towards the window where the rising sun began to filter golden light. When Emeka discovered she was pregnant, Chief Emeka, Sr. changed completely. The charming and attentive man became cold, calculating. He offered her money not to have the baby. Emeka refused. He offered her more money to disappear, to go far away, and never contact the Nwosu family. Emeka also refused that. What did she want? She wanted Chief Emeka, Sr. to recognize his daughter, to give you his surname, his protection, your legitimate place in the world. She was naive, my Emeka. She thought love could conquer the pride and ambition of a man like him. Tears began to stream down Mama Ngozi's cheeks. Chief Emeka, Senior's wife, Mrs. Kemi, discovered the truth shortly after you were born. I don't know how she found out, but she did. And Mrs. Kemi was a strong-willed woman. She gave Chief Emeka, Senior, an ultimatum. Either Emeka disappeared from their lives forever, or she would destroy him publicly, ruin his reputation, his business, everything he had built. And what did he do? He chose his empire over his daughter, over you. He told Emeka she had to leave, that she could never contact him again, that she could never reveal who her baby's father was. He offered her a considerable sum of money, enough to start a new life in another country. Adaobi felt a lump in her throat. But you said she rejected the money. She rejected it. Emeka had pride, Adaobi, too much pride for her own good. She said she wanted nothing from a man who was capable of abandoning his own blood, that she preferred to raise her daughter in poverty rather than accept crumbs from someone without honor. Mama Ngozi paused, her breathing becoming more difficult. A week after that conversation, Emeka disappeared. Adaobi's heart stopped. Disappeared? What do you mean she disappeared? Exactly that. One night, after putting you to sleep in your crib, she left the apartment saying she was going to buy milk. She never returned. Did you look for her? I looked for her for years, Adaobi. I went to the police, hired private investigators with the little money I had. I put up posters all over the city. No one found anything. It was as if the earth had swallowed her. Adaobi felt that she couldn't breathe. Do you think Chief Emeka Sr. had something to do with it? Mama Ngozi took a moment to respond. For a long time, I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think that the man my daughter had fallen in love with was capable of something like that. But over the years, as I watched the Nwosus destroy anyone who stood in their way, I began to have doubts. Doubts that turned into suspicions. Suspicions that turned into certainty. Why did you never tell me? Because I wanted to protect you. Mama Ngozi took Adaobi's face in her hands. If you had known the truth, you would have looked for the Nwosus. You would have demanded answers, and they would have destroyed you as they destroyed everyone else. I preferred you to believe your mother died in an accident. At least that way you could have peace. Peace? Adaobi stood up abruptly, frustration and pain mixing in her voice. Do you think I lived in peace believing my mother was dead? Do you think it didn't hurt every holiday without her? Every birthday? Every important moment of my life where she should have been? I know, my child. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry I lied to you. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger, braver. I'm sorry for everything. Adaobi looked at her grandmother, this woman who had sacrificed everything to raise her, who had worked until she fell ill to give her a future, who had carried impossible secrets for decades. And despite the pain, despite the betrayal she felt, she could not hate her. She knelt in front of her, taking her hands again. I forgive you, Mama, but I need to know one more thing. Do you think my mother is still alive? Mama Ngozi looked at her with eyes full of a hope she had kept hidden for years. I don't know, Adaobi, but they never found a body. There was never any proof that she was dead. And there's something I never told you, because I didn't want to give you false hopes. What is it? 5 years ago, I received a letter. No sender, no signature, it just said, she's well, do not look for her. It was written in French. Adaobi felt a shiver run down her spine. French? Why in French? Emeka spoke French perfectly. I taught it to her when she was a child, just like I taught you. It was our secret language, the one we used when we didn't want anyone else to understand. Did you keep the letter? It's in the leather folder, along with all the other documents. The room door opened, and Aisha Bello entered, looking exhausted but satisfied. Ladies, we have news. The prosecutor has decided to file formal charges against Chief Obinna and Emeka Nwosu, extortion, threats, and we are investigating possible connections to the disappearance of Emeka Nnamdi. Adaobi stood up immediately. They can investigate that? After so many years? There is no statute of limitations for certain crimes, Miss Nnamdi. And with the recorded confessions from last night, we have enough to reopen your mother's case. Mama Ngozi let out a contained sob. Truly? After all this time? Truly, madam, Aisha approached, placing a gentle hand on the elderly woman's shoulder. But we need your full cooperation. All the documents, all the letters, everything you have saved. You'll have it, Mama Ngozi nodded. Everything. Every paper, every photo, every memory. If it helps to find my Emeka, I will hand it over without hesitation. Aisha looked at Adaobi with a serious expression. There's something else you should know. During the interrogation, Emeka started talking. It seems he wants to negotiate a reduced sentence in exchange for information. What kind of information? He says he knows what really happened to Emeka Nnamdi. He says his grandfather, Chief Emeka, told him the truth before he died, and that Chief Obinna also knows, but has never admitted it. The world seemed to stop. Adaobi felt her knees weaken. Emeka knows where my mother is? We're not sure yet. He could be lying to get a better deal, but the prosecutors are going to interrogate him further. If there's any truth to what he says, we'll find it. The following hours were a whirlwind of statements, signatures, legal procedures that Adaobi barely understood. Mama Ngozi had to be taken to the hospital for a checkup due to the stress of the night, but the doctors confirmed she was stable. While waiting for news in the hospital corridor, Adaobi received an unexpected call. Miss Nnamdi, this is Chef Dele. I just found out what happened last night. Are you alright? Chef Dele. Adaobi felt relief at hearing a familiar voice. Yes, I'm fine. It was a long night. They told me they used my name to set a trap for you. I'm so sorry. If I had known, it's not your fault. You had no way of knowing. There was a pause on the line. Miss Nnamdi, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago, but I was afraid. What are you talking about? I knew your mother, Emeka. We worked together briefly many years ago in another restaurant before she started working for the Nuosus. Adaobi almost dropped the phone. You knew my mother? Yes. She was an extraordinary woman, kind, intelligent, full of life. When I knew who you were, when I saw you for the first time at the Golden Palm, I almost couldn't believe it. You are identical to her, Miss Nnamdi, identical. Why did you never tell me? Because Emeka made me promise that if someday I met her daughter, I wouldn't tell her anything until the right moment. She told me that someday, when you were ready, the truth would come out, and that when that happened, I would have to tell you something important. Adaobi's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. What is it? Not over the phone. I need to see you in person. You can come to the restaurant tomorrow morning before it opens. There's something your mother left for you, something I've kept for over 20 years. My mother left something for me? Yes, and I think it's the key to finding her. The call ended, leaving Adaobi with more questions than answers. What had her mother left her? How could Chef Dele have kept such a secret for so long? And why had Emeka trusted him that night? While Mama Ngozi slept in the hospital bed, connected to monitors that beeped softly, Adaobi stayed awake, looking out the window. The city shone with thousands of lights, each representing a life, a story, a secret. Somewhere in that world, perhaps her mother still existed. Perhaps she had spent all these years hidden, waiting for the right moment to return. Or perhaps the letter had been a cruel joke, a false hope designed to torture. It didn't matter. Adaobi would find the truth, whatever the cost. Her phone vibrated with a message from Aisha. Emeka spoke. He says Emeka didn't die. He says Chief Emeka sent her away to Europe with a new identity. He says there's evidence in a safe deposit box that only Chief Obinna can open. Tomorrow we'll try to get a judicial order. This isn't over, Adaobi. It's just beginning. Adaobi read the message 3 times, letting the words penetrate her mind. Her mother was alive, or at least had been alive, when Chief Emeka sent her away. Europe, a new identity, a safe deposit box with evidence. And Chef Dele had something her mother had left her, something he had kept for over 2 decades waiting for this moment. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together, but the complete picture was still blurry, incomplete, full of shadows and mysteries. Adaobi looked at her sleeping grandmother. This woman who had sacrificed everything for her, who had carried impossible secrets to protect her. I'm going to find her, Mama, she whispered in the dark. I'm going to find Mama, I promise you. Outside, the night continued its course, indifferent to the human dramas unfolding under its cloak of stars. But inside Adaobi, something had changed permanently. She was no longer just a waitress fighting to survive. She was a daughter looking for her mother, a granddaughter honoring her grandmother's sacrifice, a woman reclaiming her truth, and nothing and no one was going to stop her. Not even the ghosts of the past that still remained to be discovered, because in the Nuos's safe deposit box waited secrets no one had imagined. Secrets that would not only change Adaobi's life, they would change everything she thought she knew about her family, about the Nuosus, and about the night Emeka Nnamdi disappeared forever. The sun had barely begun to rise when Adaobi arrived at the Golden Palm. The restaurant looked different in the morning light, stripped of its glamour, revealing the cracks in the walls and the wear of the years, as if the building itself knew it no longer had to pretend perfection. Chef Dele awaited her at the back door, the same place where days earlier her nightmare had begun. But this time, the chef had a different expression. It wasn't worry or fear. It was something Adaobi couldn't fully identify. Nostalgia, anticipation, guilt. "Thank you for coming, Miss Namdi." His voice was softer than usual. "I know that after everything that happened here, this place must bring back bad memories." "Memories don't scare me, Chef. What scares me is not knowing the truth." Chef Dele nodded slowly and led her inside. They walked through the empty kitchen to a small room at the back that Adaobi had never noticed. It was barely a storage closet filled with dusty boxes and old utensils. "I worked here for 32 years, Chef Dele spoke as he moved boxes. "Long before the Nwosus bought this place, long before you were born." He stopped in front of a rusty metal box, hidden behind sacks of flour. "When I met your mother, I was just a kitchen assistant. Emeka sometimes came with Mama Ngozi, while she did translations for a businessman who dined here regularly. Your mother was extraordinary. She had that light some people possess, that ability to make everyone around her feel special." "Were you close?" "We were friends. Good friends. Emeka had no one but Mama Ngozi. And I was alone in the world too. We understood each other." Chef Dele opened the metal box with a small key he wore around his neck. Inside was a package wrapped in fabric, yellowed by the passage of time. "The night before Emeka disappeared, she came to see me. She was scared, but also determined. She told me she had to leave, that she couldn't explain why, but that she needed to ask me a favor." Chef Dele's hands trembled as he unwrapped the package. "She gave me this. She made me swear to keep it until her daughter was ready to receive it. She told me, when Adaobi is strong, when the world can no longer ignore her, then she will know it's time." Inside the package were 3 objects: a letter sealed with red wax, a small photograph, and a passport. Adaobi picked up the photograph first. In it, Emeka appeared, clearly pregnant, smiling at the camera with one hand on her belly. Behind the photo, in elegant handwriting, was written, "For my Adaobi, the day I knew you would be my greatest gift." Tears began to fall before Adaobi could stop them. "The passport." Chef Dele pointed to the document. "Look at it." Adaobi opened it with trembling hands. It was a French passport, and the name that appeared was not Emeka Namdi, it was Chantal Dubois. "Your mother had a false identity," Chef Dele explained. "She had obtained it months before disappearing. I think she was planning to flee, to start a new life away from the Nwosus. But then, if she had everything prepared, why didn't she take me with her?" "That, Miss Namdi, I think the letter explains it." Adaobi looked at the sealed envelope. Her hands trembled so much she could barely hold it. Her whole life, all the unanswered questions, all the voids in her heart. Perhaps the answers were there on that yellowed paper, waiting to be read. She broke the seal carefully, as if the envelope could disintegrate at any moment. Inside were several pages written in her mother's hand, the same handwriting she had seen in the letter. Mama Ngozi kept Emeka's handwriting. Adaobi began to read aloud, needing to hear her mother's words filling the silence. "My dearest Adaobi, if you are reading this, it means the time has come. It means you are strong, that you are brave, that you are everything I always knew you would be. There are so many things I wish I could have told you in person, so many hugs I wish I could have given you, so many nights I wish I had been there to comfort you when you cried, but life forced me to choose, and I chose your safety over my happiness. Chief Emeka Nwosu Sr. is your father. I don't know if you already know it when you read this, but I need you to understand it from my perspective. I loved him, Adaobi. I loved him with all my naive heart, and he, in his own twisted way, also loved me. But the love of men like him always has limits, and those limits are power and money. When I became pregnant, Chief Emeka, Sr., offered me money to disappear. I refused. I wanted him to recognize you, to give you your place. I was foolish to think his love was stronger than his ambition. Then his wife, Mrs. Kemi, discovered everything, and she was not like Chief Emeka, Sr. She was dangerous. She threatened me directly. She told me that if I didn't disappear, she would make sure something bad happened to you, to my baby, to my Adaobi. I couldn't risk it. I couldn't put you in danger. So, I made a deal. I would leave, disappear forever. In return, Mrs. Kemi promised that they would never touch you, that they would let you live in peace with your grandmother. Chief Emeka, Sr. accepted the deal, but with one condition. I could not take you with me. He said you were his blood, that he would not allow his daughter to grow up in poverty in some foreign country. It was the hardest decision of my life, Adaobi. Leaving you was like tearing my heart from my chest, but I did it because I loved you more than my own life. I left you with Mama Ngozi because I knew she would raise you with love, with values, with the strength I could not give you directly. I went to France, took on a new identity, built a new life, but never, not a single day, did I stop thinking about you. I never stopped loving you. I never stopped dreaming of the moment I could see you again. Years ago, when I learned that Chief Emeka Sr. had died, I thought of returning. But Chief Obinna already controlled everything, and he was worse than his father, more cruel, more ruthless. I was afraid of what he might do to you if I appeared. So I waited. I waited for you to be strong enough to face them. I waited for the world to see who you truly are. And if you are reading this, it means that moment has arrived. Adaobi, my love, my life, my reason for existing, I am alive. I have been alive all these years waiting for you. And if you want to find me, if you want to know me, if you can forgive me for leaving you, there is a place in Paris, a small café in Montmartre called Le Refuge de Sam. I go there every Sunday morning for 20 years. I always order the same thing, coffee with milk and a croissant. I always sit at the same table by the window, and I always look towards the door, waiting for the day my daughter walks through it. I love you, Adaobi. I loved you from the moment I knew you existed. I will love you until the last breath of my life. Your mother, Amaka. Adaobi finished reading, and the silence that followed was absolute. Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably, falling onto the paper, mixing with words that had waited over 2 decades to be read. Chef Deli was also crying, unashamed, not trying to hide it. She's alive, Adaobi whispered. My mother is alive. She always was, Miss Namdi, waiting for you, loving you from afar. Adaobi hugged the letter to her chest, feeling as if her mother's arms were embracing her across time and distance. At that moment, her phone rang. It was Aisha. Adaobi, we have the judicial order. They opened the Nwosu's safe deposit box and found something you urgently need to see. Something about your mother. Something Chief Obinna hid for years. Adaobi looked at Chef Dele, then at the letter, then at the passport with the name Chantal Dubois. I'm on my way. Because her mother's letter had answered many questions, but what awaited in that safe deposit box would reveal that Amaka Namdi's story was much more complex than anyone had imagined, and that Adaobi's journey was just beginning. The Nwosu's safe deposit box contained decades of secrets, bribery documents, illegal contracts, evidence of shady dealings that would shake any business empire. But none of that mattered to Adaobi at that moment. What mattered was a manila envelope with her name written in handwriting she would now recognize anywhere, her mother's handwriting. Aisha handed it to her with careful hands. Chief Obinna stored this here years ago. Apparently, Amaka sent this letter to Chief Emeka Sr. shortly before he died, asking him to deliver it to his daughter. He never did, and Chief Obinna decided to bury it, along with all his family's other secrets. Adaobi opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet and a recent photograph. The image showed a woman with gray hair, bright eyes, and a smile that was exactly like her own. Amaka, her mother, alive, real, waiting for her. The letter was brief. My Adaobi, if you ever read this, I want you to know that I never stopped fighting for you. Every year on your birthday, I sent letters to your father asking him to give them to you. He never did, but I keep waiting. I will always wait. Le Refuge de Sam, every Sunday, until my heart stops beating. I love you, Mama. Adaobi looked at Aisha, then at Chef Dele, who had arrived with her, and finally made a decision that would change her life forever. I need to go to Paris. The flight lasted hours that felt like eternities. Mama Ngozi could not travel due to her health condition, but she insisted that Adaobi go. Go, my child, she had told her in the hospital, holding her hands tightly. Go, find my Amaka. Tell her I forgive her, tell her I never stopped loving her, and bring her back home. Aisha took care of everything, the tickets, the hotel, the contacts in France who would help if anything went wrong. The report on the Nwosus could wait. This was more important. It was Sunday when Adaobi arrived in Montmartre. The cobbled streets shone under a spring sun. Artists painted on the corners. Musicians played melodies that floated in the air like promises. And there, on a narrow street, was the café her mother had mentioned, Le Refuge de Sam, the refuge of souls. Adaobi stopped in front of the door, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone around her could hear it. What if her mother wasn't there? What if she had stopped going? What if after so many years she no longer wanted to be found? But then she remembered Mama Ngozi's words. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting in spite of it. She pushed the door open and entered. The cafe was small, cozy, with walls covered in old photographs, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling every corner. There were few people at that early hour. A young couple in a corner, an old man reading the newspaper, and by the window, at a table for two, a silver-haired woman looked out at the street with the expression of someone who had waited a lifetime. Adaobi couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything. But look at that woman, who was her mother, who had sacrificed everything to protect her, who had spent over 2 decades waiting for this moment. Then Emeka turned her head, their eyes met, and the world stopped. Emeka clutched a hand to her chest as if her heart threatened to burst out. Her lips trembled, forming a word that didn't quite come out. Tears began to roll down her cheeks as she slowly stood up, not taking her eyes off Adaobi. Adaobi, her voice was barely a whisper. My Adaobi, Mama. That single word broke the dam that held back decades of pain, absence, unexpressed love. Emeka ran towards her daughter and enveloped her in an embrace that seemed to want to reclaim all the lost hugs, all the goodnight kisses, all the tears she couldn't wipe away. My baby, Emeka sobbed. My beautiful baby, you finally came. You finally came. Adaobi also cried, clinging to her mother as if she feared she would disappear again. I found you, Mama. I found you. They remained embraced for minutes that felt like hours, while the other customers in the cafe watched, moved, not fully understanding what they were witnessing, but feeling the magnitude of the moment. When they finally separated, Emeka took Adaobi's face in her hands, studying every detail as if she wanted to memorize every line, every expression. You are beautiful, she whispered, more beautiful than I ever imagined. And those eyes, you have my eyes and your smile, according to Mama Ngozi. How is my mother? She's waiting for you. She's ill, but she's fighting. She wants to see you, Mama. She wants you to come home. Emeka closed her eyes, new tears escaping. Can she forgive me? After I abandoned her? She forgave you a long time ago. She just wants to hug you one more time. They sat together at the table by the window, the same table where Emeka had waited for 20 years. And they talked. They talked for hours, sharing stories, filling voids, building bridges over the abyss of time that had separated them. Emeka told about her life in Paris, how she had worked as a translator using the languages Mama Ngozi had taught her, how she had built a small but dignified life, how every Sunday she came to this cafe, hoping to see her daughter walk through that door. Adaobi told about her life, about Mama Ngozi raising her with unwavering love, about learning 7 languages, listening to her grandmother, about working as a waitress, being humiliated, and finally finding her voice. You answered in German. Emeka laughed through tears when Adaobi told the story. Of course you did. You are my daughter and Mama Ngozi's granddaughter, the 2 strongest women I know. As the sun began to set over Paris, painting the sky with golden and pink hues, Emeka took Adaobi's hands. And now what? Now you come home with me. Mama Ngozi needs you. I need you. There's no one to hide from anymore, Mama. The Nwosus are finished. Chief Obinna and Emeka will face justice for everything they did. And you deserve to get your life back. Emeka looked out the window at the city streets that had been her refuge for so long. I spent over 20 years running, Adaobi, hiding, living half a life, because the other half of my heart was with you. Can I really go back? Can I really start anew? Not start anew, Mama. Continue. Continue from where we were. Unjustly separated. Continue being a family. Weeks later, at the city airport, Mama Ngozi waited in a wheelchair, surrounded by Aisha, Chef Dele, and the medical team who had insisted on accompanying her. When the international arrivals doors opened and Adaobi appeared, holding the arm of a silver-haired woman, the cry that escaped Mama Ngozi was purely animal, the sound of a mother finding her lost daughter. Emeka ran to her, kneeling in front of the wheelchair, taking her mother's hands. Mama, forgive me for leaving you. Forgive me for everything. Mama Ngozi hugged her with the little strength she had left, but with all the love she had saved for decades. There's nothing to forgive, my child. You're here, you're alive, that's all that matters. Adaobi watched the scene, tears streaming down her cheeks. 3 generations of Namdi women finally reunited. 3 women who had survived impossible losses, terrible injustices, and cruel separations, but who had never, ever stopped loving each other. Aisha published her report weeks later. The story of the Nwosus and their fall was national news for months. Chief Obinna and Emeka were convicted on multiple charges, losing not only their freedom, but the entire empire they had built on lies and cruelty. Street. Michael's General Hospital was saved thanks to a coalition of ethical investors that Aisha helped bring together. Mama Ngozi was able to continue her treatment without worries, surrounded now by her daughter and granddaughter. Adaobi received job offers from international translation agencies, prestigious universities, and humanitarian organizations that wanted to leverage her gift for languages, but she chose something different. She founded a free language school for underprivileged youth, teaching in the same way Mama Ngozi had taught her, with patience, with love, with the certainty that knowledge is the most powerful weapon against injustice. She named it the Emeka Ngozi Nnamdi Language Academy. One spring afternoon, Adaobi sat in the garden of her new house, watching her mother and grandmother converse under the shade of a tree. Mama Ngozi laughed at something Emeka said, a sound Adaobi thought she would never hear. Emeka noticed her gaze and smiled, extending a hand to her. "Come here, my child, sit with us." Adaobi joined them, sitting on the grass between the two women she loved most in the world. "Do you know what I learned from all of this?" she said softly. "What, my love?" Mama Ngozi asked. "That the most important language isn't German or French or any of the 7 I speak. The most important language is love. And that I learned from you." Emeka and Mama Ngozi exchanged a glance, their eyes shining with tears of happiness. "And you speak it perfectly, my child." Emeka kissed her forehead. "You speak it perfectly." The sun set over the city, painting the sky with the same golden and pink hues Adaobi had seen in Paris the day she found her mother. But now, those colors had a different meaning. They were no longer the end of a day. They were the beginning of a new life. A life where 3 women, whom the world had tried to separate, were finally together. A life where truth had triumphed over lies. A life where love had conquered power. And that life, Adaobi knew with absolute certainty, was the best ending she could ever have imagined. Because it wasn't really an ending. It was the beginning of everything that always should have been.